Expanding Cultural Perspectives by Shannon Kringen. So hi, I am primarily an artist, and what I'm going to show you is photos that I took of various European trips that I've taken, mostly to Norway, to Oslo, Norway, to Edinburgh, Scotland, and to parts of Italy, Florence, Pisa, Venice, the Cinque Terre, I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. And I interviewed for this assignment, because I'm trying to stay on track here, because I'm primarily a creative person and I'm not really majoring in psychology. But I interviewed my friend Jack, who lives in America, but he was born in Ireland. And his parents actually are American, but his dad works for the State Department, and they moved around a lot, and so he was born in Ireland. And he also lived in Portugal and I think Spain and Italy and many different countries, and he's traveled around a lot, and he thinks that he's been very influenced by the different countries that he's lived in, and the sort of more Irish attitude of thinking that healthcare is just a part of life and normal, and taking care of older people is just a normal thing to do. And so I interviewed him, and he told me about, he is one of 5 kids. He's the oldest, and again, his parents are American, and yet he's a dual citizen. I think he's Irish or part of the European Union as well as American. So he's dual citizen, and his wife he met in Ireland. He now works at Microsoft. So he really loves living in America because Microsoft paid for his travel expenses moving from Dublin, Ireland to Seattle, and they paid for his whole way. And he gets a really good healthcare plan at Microsoft. So he's happy with the way it is in America. And he told me about some of the cultural differences that he sees in the United States versus other countries that he's lived. My friend Jack that I interviewed is 50 years old, and he has 4 kids, and he has 4 siblings. Again, his parents are American, and he lived in actually part of Germany. He's lived in Portugal and Italy and Germany and Ireland and Denmark and Alaska in this country. And then in junior high, he went to boarding school in Ireland at the age of 12. And I guess he stayed there until he was 42, which is very unusual, but that's because he liked it so much. And then after high school, he worked in the USA and then Italy, and he learned Italian, and he had nannies growing up. He's very different than me. I'm an artist, introspective, introverted, only child. Jack said he's an extrovert, and he has 4 siblings. And let's see, his dad bought a hotel in Ireland, and he helped out. And then eventually, let's see, in Cork, Ireland, he got involved with an Apple dealer, Apple Computers, and he got involved in computer work. And then he met his current wife in Dublin, Ireland. And he got a job at Microsoft somehow. He became a vendor for Microsoft, and Microsoft paid for him and his wife to move from Dublin to Seattle, and they ended up having 4 kids here. And Jack has been influenced by, he had like a Portuguese nanny, and then a nanny when he was a kid, a nanny from Brazil, and he works with a Japanese manager, I guess, at Microsoft. And he basically is very multicultural influenced, and his holidays when he was a kid, Irish people, he says, they go to Turkey and Italy and Paris and the United States. And I think the development in other countries is very different because healthcare is built in and people pay taxes, and it's just not as stressful for people. I think that there's a happier, healthier way of life, especially, and I know from traveling, see, it's hard for me to focus on Jack. I want to focus on the fact that I've gone to Europe 6 times, and I went to Australia actually when I was in my early 20s, And then I went to Mexico and also in my early 20s. And so I stayed with people in Australia and Mexico that let me stay with them for free, and I was able to learn about the culture. And then in 96 I went to Amsterdam and Paris and London and Barcelona, and I took the train around and went all over the place and just by myself and just took a lot of photographs and stayed in youth hostels and met lots of people and was fascinated by the Anne Frank house in Amsterdam, and also have stayed with a friend in Norway. So basically, I've gone to Europe like in 92 and 93, I went to Mexico and Australia, and then in 96, I went to Europe by myself the first time, and went to Amsterdam and all over the place, and did a big loop on the Eurail train pass thing, and just soaked in the culture. And then in 2001 is when I took my second trip to Europe, and I went to England and stayed with this black Jamaican man who is British but from Jamaica originally, and he's a professor of physics at the University of Warwickshire, and so he kind of told me about what it's like. And then I don't really see myself as an American, even though I have an American passport and I'm a white person and I speak English. When I travel, I feel like I fit in with eclectic, creative people. So I don't really see myself culturally as an American. And I see myself as an introverted artist who lives in my inner world, in my dream world. And I love to travel and take photos. And I believe that healthcare, I believe in a socialized democracy like Bernie Sanders. And I went to England in 2001, and then I went to Amsterdam in 2003, and I stayed with this Canadian that I met that let me stay with him for free. And I got to meet Zavaria Hollander, who wrote a book in the 70s called The Happy Hooker. She was a fascinating person to talk to. And then I also, 2005, somebody invited me and paid my way to go to Italy, Venice, Pisa, Florence, and we went to Euronat, a nudist clothing optional beach in France, on the coast of France. And I love being in different cultures where it's clothing optional and GMO foods are banned and healthcare is just built into your taxes and it's not tied in with your job. I also went to Europe again in 2005. I did that trip to Italy, and we went to France and stayed at the clothing optional. It was an entire campground actually that was clothing optional, and entire families were walking around nude together and just being nude and natural and just eating and swimming and just doing everyday normal things in a clothing optional way. And I've been in this country, in the USA, I've been to Florida 3 times to the Midwinter Naturist Gathering in Loxahatchee, Florida, where everybody is nude together and just lives and eats health food and does yoga and swims and eats and drinks and just it's like all about healing and accepting your body as it is. And I'm a figure model for a living, so I don't really see myself as an American, even though I am. I see myself as a somebody who is a naturist. I love nature. I'm not religious. Church is to me, I don't go to church. To me, church is being out in the woods, and nature is my God, and trees are gods to me, and I feel like a very spiritual person. And so the whole cultural development, lifespan development thing is a challenge for me, because I feel like on one hand I like that America is individualized. You know, we're encouraged to explore our individuality, but I don't like the competitive attitude that some Americans have. And so I envy my friends in Europe who get health care and have this sort of common decency and ethical attitude of taking care of each other, taking care of poor people and old people and little children, and that society, you know, the health of society is important to people in other countries, perhaps more than it is to the average American. We have this sort of dog-eat-dog, competitive John Wayne, every man for himself thing in the U.S., and I am really repulsed by that. Although I love being an artist and enjoying my individuality, but what I like to do is to take my art and share it in a very cooperative way. And I would happily pay higher taxes if we could have non-profit health care in the United States of America. I usually call the USA Incorporated, because I sometimes feel like this country is more of a corporation and less of a country, and I feel like corporations have taken over the government, and they just buy the government. So I love talking to people from other countries, and I love traveling. And I also went in 2008. I went to Oslo, Norway, and stayed with my friend who lives there. And then in 2012, I went to Edinburgh, Scotland, and met my friend from England there. And I did couch surfing, and I stayed with people for free, who Scottish people, and a grad student from South America, getting his PhD in botanical, something to do with plants and botanical studies. And I had a wonderful time staying with people in Scotland, and there was just this really generous attitude. And I met a guy from Russia, and I also have a friend that lives in Russia. And I found out that in most European countries, and including Russia, Russia as well, cell phones, you only pay one direction. In the USA, you pay both directions. In most other countries, you only pay when you call out on your cell phone. And when you receive a call or a text, you don't pay. You only pay when you call out or text out. So it's much more fair in terms of being ethical with cell phone companies. And a lot of countries, GMO foods are banned, and people get health care automatically. And I've asked all my friends from the different European countries that I know about what healthcare really works, and all of them told me fairly positive things. In fact, I know a woman an English woman who has arthritis and asthma, and she has 2 sons, and she had to get in vitro fertilization to get pregnant, and it was very hard. And in America, her and her husband are both self-employed, creative people, and they have automatic health care with the National Health Service in the UK, and their medical bills would be astronomical if they lived in this country. I don't think she would have been able to have 2 kids and be a self-employed artist, if not for the National Health Service in England. So there's an example right there of how socialized healthcare actually helps people in real life, like, a mother and her 2 sons and her husband who are self-employed. And I've watched her. She blogs a lot online about, having to take her sons to the hospital overnight, and there's never a concern for a big bill. And also my therapist, her husband recently in America, her husband almost recently died of pneumonia and sepsis, and the insurance company, supposedly she has insurance, and they're trying to bill her $100,000, and the insurance company is trying not to pay it, so she's having to fight with them. So the United States really needs to change. We need health care, and also I know college, going to university in a lot of other countries is a lot cheaper, and people don't go $60,000 and $80,000 and $100,000 into debt when they get a college degree in most other countries. That's a very American thing, this whole capitalism, college debt profit thing, and all the money goes to war and Wall Street, and I'm really pissed off about that. And I think about moving and living in another country. Maybe I could teach English in another country, or if I could somehow get an artist visa and go to Berlin. I know somebody doing that, an American who's going to Berlin for 2 years maybe, and to do art and work there, because there's special artist visas you can get in Berlin. And so this is my lifespan video. I hope you enjoyed it. It's experimental, and it's just a mishmash of my random improv stuff, but I love hearing about other cultures and other languages, and I really think that having healthcare built into society makes people a lot less stressed out. Having a cooperative attitude is really healthy and nourishing for people, and I think there would be a lot less mental illness and post-traumatic stress disorder in the United States if we had health care built into our system, and if we would ban GMO foods and we had more solar power. And I agree with Bernie Sanders, Senator Bernie Sanders, who recently said that the United States can learn a lot from Denmark and other European countries who have socialized democracy, who give their citizens health care and access to going to college without going into huge debt, and also who ban GMO foods and who hold corporations accountable and make corporations pay taxes like everybody else, as well as making wealthy people pay their fair share of taxes. And I just believe in more of a cooperative society. I think people would develop in a much healthier, happier ways if we had a more socialized way of dealing with people, where we're all in this together, and instead of competing and everybody trying to get rich, maybe the goal should be that we all share and we all have a common, decent way of life. So thank you for listening.